Welcome back to the Truth Be Told podcast, where we tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help us God. In this episode, we'll be discussing what's the true tea. Okay, everybody wants to know what it is, and everybody's talking about it. So, do you know what's the true tea? Well, if you're ready, willing, and able to have a deep and honest conversation about what's tea, let's dive in, shall we? Today's tea is transgenerational epigenetics. Transgenerational epigenetics is the concept that environmental exposures and choices made in one generation can leave chemical marks or modifications in the DNA structure, which passes down through the blood to future generations, right? This topic is typically discussed in regards to the animal kingdom. There are several studies conducted on mice to show how stress, toxins, and parental diet can affect the offspring through metabolism, behavior, and fertility. In regards to humans, research suggests that there are serious links between ancestral famine or trauma and health outcomes. Some examples are metabolic disease and mental health, just to name a few, and its descendants, right? So, plainly put, okay, what one generation experiences, goes through, is affected by, right? Life stressors, environmental stressors, things that they have to deal with are typically land in the DNA, modifying it so that certain adaptations could be made when later generations experience the same thing. It triggers a certain response, and you handle it in a way that has been adapted through the bloodline, quite literally, right? So these are the things we say that are passed down through our generations, whether you believe they're ancestral traumas, generational curses, okay? The things that are passed down through the bloodline, okay, by way of what was experienced through prior generations, okay, that we come in contact with throughout each generation, and how we conduct ourselves and handle it accordingly, right? When discussing this about humans, the conversation typically stems around Blacks and Jews, particularly how the effects of slavery and trauma were passed down through the DNA, right, genetically. Some examples of this are how some people attribute to a lot of people experiencing phobias around water to the transatlantic slave trade, right? Or how we're prone to a crabs in a barrel mentality due to the plantation politics that we had to endure, right? These are common conversations we have quite literally all the time within communities, family systems, structures, on social media, what have you, right? So just things that are passed down through the DNA. I don't know if people are aware, quite literally, the DNA structure is modified. Like your behavior patterns and the way you react to certain things can be genetically modified through your DNA. So the way you deal with stress, trauma, heartbreak, whatever have you, the joys in life, okay? When you're experiencing certain environments, right? It doesn't have to be all related around trauma, but those things are typically passed down through the bloodlines, okay? Through our lineage, okay? So if you're an emotional eater, right, you could have picked that up somewhere. Our eating habits, our coping mechanisms, those things are typically passed down, whether it's something you've seen quite physically from one generation to the next, how people handle trauma, heartbreak, loss, grief, right? Those things are passed down. You might embody something that you don't know another ancestor embodied, right? You act like your grandmother, or you sound like your grandpa, right? It could be someone you never even met, but somehow those things are passed down. But when we talk about the systemic effects that long-standing slavery, long-standing traumas have done to our genetics, okay, that has modified our DNA in a very, very serious way, right? So we always hear that conversation, right? That's a very common conversation, right? Even if they don't label it as transgenerational epigenetics, we talk about generational curses all the time. It's very trendy right now to talk about being a generational curse breaker, something of the sort, right? But what the true tea is, that's what we're here to talk about now, right? The true tea is what's not being discussed. Okay, there's a very important conversation being omitted from the table. Okay, so what's the true tea? I'm glad you asked. What's not being discussed is the genetic makeup or the genetic inheritance of non melanated people, right? Now, we could take this conversation a couple of different ways. I could discuss how some of us have dominant genes and some of us have recessive genes, and that is really the basis of racism. Some people are aware that just by us simply procreating, we can obliterate every race because some of our genes are dominant and other genes are recessive. Therefore, whoever we choose to procreate with, regardless of race, right, that offspring will be considered black because you guessed it, we have the dominant genes, okay? We're not we're not going to talk about that though today, okay? Let's stay on topic. What's not being discussed is what is passed down through their DNA. And quite literally, that's a conversation that needs to be had because we are all suffering the effects of it to this day as we see. Okay? So, as they say, all roads lead to Rome. So let's take a little visit to Rome, shall we? What do we know about Rome? Don't worry, I handled the research for you, as I always do. And what I came up with very quickly on the Great Googler is Rome is most notably known for its immense influence on Western civilization. Yes, America, that is you. Okay? Through its law, engineering, language, military power, and political structures. I would like to know how that is going for us right now. Don't worry, I'll wait. So, this is where we get the ideas of political structure, our law systems, political power, military power, the use of such forces, okay, to dominate and control. What else do we know about Rome? Well, most people know it for being the home of the Colosseum. It is quite literally the epicenter of the city and their culture. And what was going on in the Colosseum? Fighting. Quite brutal fighting, right? Till the end, right? So if we look at their history, what we quite see is a culture that has been immersed in fighting and wars. Okay? The argument could be made quite literally that it's not their fault. It simply runs in their blood, okay? Quite literally, what we see is a culture immersed in war, fighting, greed, robbery, okay, and the overthrowing and taking of other people's lands and governments, right? So, when we talk about a crabs in a barrel mentality, that's basically when someone or something, right, sees another person, place, thing, entity rising above expected outcomes to kind of get out of certain environments, whether natural or man-made. We we won't be discussing that either. How certain environments came about for certain people to have to strive to thrive and get out of, right? To survive, right? When we should all be thriving, okay? So while we can shift the blame and point the finger elsewhere, we have to look at where this stems from, okay? All roads leading to Rome, okay? A culture immersed in war, quite barbaric tactics, okay? And if you know anything about their history, okay, their claim to fame was power by any means necessary, okay? So regardless of what they had to do, what they had to take, who they had to step on, where they had to go and conquer, it did not matter. All that mattered was their power and influence, divide and conquer, okay? And what we do know is a dominating spirit is not a good one, okay? The incessant need to control the environment around you, the people in which operate in those environments, okay, is a very troubling mindset to have, okay? Instead of allowing people to be sovereign citizens, sovereign states, countries, what have you, the need to control has gotten out of control, as we see, okay? History repeating itself. And what do we know about the Roman Empire? Where is it currently? Okay? That didn't go well, okay? And we've seen this time and time again where we have certain leaders of certain cultures, right, whose main goal is to obtain more power, more possessions, more resources, maintaining that sense of entitlement, greed, and superiority, right, on the world stage, okay, for everyone to see. So while we have everyone kind of focused on what Black people are doing, no one's having the real conversations. What we are seeing and dealing with right now is quite literally the effects of unchecked behaviors that have gone on systemically with this culture of people since the beginning of time. We could take it back to Esau, but we won't be talking about that today either, okay? This really goes back far, and I need you guys to really grasp what we're saying here, okay? The Romans, remember, were quite literally responsible for the ending of a quite important being, right, in the past. So, what we do know is they will stop at nothing to have their way, to dominate, to control. And what we have to come to realize is now is the time to stop the dividing and conquering, okay? Now is the time to take that internal inventory to say, what is the problem here? Typically, when you have someone reacting or acting out in a way like this, it's all fear based, okay? Elon Musk just admitted it quite openly on his Twitter account, okay? What will happen when white men are no longer in power, okay? They are scared that they will get what they know would be just due. And if they would only understand that many people just want the freedom to exist without being controlled, okay, on every level, environmentally, educationally, systemically, judicially, right? On every level, financially, spiritually, emotionally, physically, through diet, through mind control, through different propaganda tactics to bait each other against one another. So none of us address the real problem. None of us are looking at the real cause of why we are in the situation that we are in as a whole. What everyone needs to come to understand is that we are one world. We are one human race. We are meant to thrive. We are meant to grow. We are meant to be our best selves, okay? Individually, right? in your family systems and structures, locally in your neighborhoods, your cities, your states, and that is to expand globally, right? We can only get to the places we're meant to go as a collective whole, as a collective society, if all of us are thriving and operating at our best. And we can't do that, okay, with our cousins in charge who think that they're in charge of everything, okay? Quite literally feeling like they need to be the overseer of the world, as if that is going well, as if that has ever gone well for us, okay? We've seen where these type of leaderships go and land us, okay? It's not well, okay? We see where this type of propaganda leaves us, okay? Not well, okay? It led to concentration camps. This led to chattel slavery, the worst slavery ever in history, right? So we know where this goes. Jim Crow laws, segregation. Um, we could pile on and point the finger and do the trauma train and right, cast blame everywhere. What I am suggesting is that we all take personal ownership in this situation that we have going on. We have a group of people who were entrusted to lead and took that position of power and abused it. We have another group of people who have enabled this due to the false narratives spread by those in charge, okay? We're kept comfortable in our pits of confusion, okay? We are all kept in place by the comforts placed before us, okay? So as long as you can go out and buy your favorite brand names, pretend to be someone of importance, have a job, make money, live your life, okay, with what seemingly is freedom, right? You feel like you have the freedom to choose. When in today's society, choice has become an optical illusion. Quite literally, you are being programmed to make certain choices, okay, by your need to survive in life, okay? So we have to do certain things to ensure we have money to live, to take care of our households, our families, etc., have enough money to spend on leisure activities, etc., etc., okay? As long as you're stuck in a survival mode mentality, okay, you are not tapping into the space where you can thrive beyond that. You are not tapping into your highest potential, okay? Because you're too busy having to figure out how to survive for the basic necessities, right? Which we know are food, shelter, air, water, safety, right? Those are the main basic necessities that we are quite literally having to fight for at this time, okay? Housing crisis all over the place. We have hunger all over the place, famine in some parts of the world, okay? In the year 2026, we should have no places that are famine stricken, okay? We shouldn't have food deserts. There shouldn't be anyone going hungry, okay? We know how to make what we need to make, do what we need to do. We have evolved to a place where we should be able to have every corner of the earth thriving, not just surviving, okay? Because we have so many people in positions of leadership that are more focused on greed and preserving their personal pockets than protecting the interests of the people overall that they were entrusted to lead. We have a system where it doesn't work unless you're in the good old boys club. It doesn't work unless you're in the top 1%. It does not work trying to measure the economy by how well the rich are doing, okay? When you have everyone else at a point where they're trying to figure out where their next meal will come. They're still trying to operate in plantation politics just on a larger scale, okay? They're the overseers, we are the workers who work for the bare minimum just to survive while they fill their pockets or have little or no care to how their actions affect us overall, okay? What we do know is this is a system that does not work. The system is not broken. It is firing on all four cylinders at high altitude, full force, full steam ahead, right? So, what we have to come to understand is that we've tried it, it doesn't work. Trying to step on people's necks just to get ahead does not work, okay? That's a system that always will fail. This is the part that they're missing, a sense of community. Now, we could talk about the calcified pineal glands, but we won't talk about that today either, okay? Which affects their interconnectedness with other humans as a whole and having empathy, compassion, and a sense of belonging, okay? So their disconnection from what truly matters is making us all suffer. And it comes from their genetic makeup, their genetic inheritance, or transgenerational epigenetics, okay? So, this is a conversation that we definitely need to expound upon because we are all dealing with the effects of this, right? And at this time, it has become detrimental to the health, the safety, of the entire world at this point. We are all quite literally seeing the effects across the world. We quite literally don't know what will happen next simply because people feel threatened in their positions of power and are doing anything at this time to maintain control of resources and man made items, okay? We should be really focused on is the well being of us all as a whole world together. Okay. So that is the tea, family. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Stay tuned. We'll be getting into more of the tea quite soon. And you never know when I'll pop up with another video. So make sure you like and subscribe so you can stay in tune with this vibe, okay? And until next time, as I always say, truth without love is brutality, and love without truth is hypocrisy. So we must tell the truth, okay? As they say, fools multiply when wise men are silent, so we mustn't be silent either, okay? We must tell the truth even when it hurts. Until next time, peace, y'all.